Hi everyone, so this is the last zodiac sign of this series, the constellation of Cancer. And just before we go into this sign, I really want to hit home the understanding that there is the possibility for those who are really awakening that identifying with just one zodiac sign becomes more and more irrelevant because the path to self-knowledge is of the self. And the self is not confined to just one zodiac or one planet or one set of characteristics, but the entire solar system, the entirety of what it means to be a human being. And if one is truly on the path towards self knowledge, instead of being a mere terrestrial man with terrestrial consciousness, such a person becomes a planetary man, meaning someone who embodies the intelligences of all 12 planets within themselves. And beyond the planetary man, one can become a galactic man with galactic understanding of reality, of consciousness. And of course, that's something extremely profound. Neither I or anyone who watches this channel has that level of consciousness. Instead, we're all stuck with trying to figure out what it means to just be a terrestrial person, a mere earthly animal. So each video in this series has been just a very small peek into 12 aspects of humanity's nature. And if we walk the spiritual path, gaining knowledge of the self, we gain knowledge of all of humanity in turn. And that's all of humanity without distinction. Even the worst of criminals, or also the most virtuous. We come to know everyone as part of ourselves. Everyone exists in here, in God, in consciousness, which is shared by all of humanity, all of us. But to reach this profound point of understanding intimately, or in order to become a planetary man, it is a cosmic law that one needs deep divine love within themselves for all people, for all beings. Because if you hate or judge even just one human being, you are hating or judging a part of yourself. And that shows God, that shows cosmic law that you lack wisdom. And in turn, you will acquire less consciousness. Hate implies lack of self-knowledge. But love, not love that comes from the mind or from duality, but love that comes from beyond the mind, love that comes from divinity, from God, grants far more higher levels of being. And it is a requirement that if we want higher levels of being, higher levels of understanding, consciousness, and realization, that we know how to sacrifice ourselves for others, for humanity. So the problem today with modern zodiac schools is that everyone is identifying with just one sign or the other, thinking one is better than the other, or comparing with other signs. And we also see a lot of hate towards other signs too. And these types of attitudes have nothing to do with the origins of authentic, esoteric, zodiacal wisdom. This is a very mechanical, terrestrial, horizontal way to look at the zodiac, which is, of course, how almost 100% of people see it today, unfortunately. And so we can relate all of this to the sign of Cancer, in the sense that it is symbolized by the crab. And the crab is always walking sideways, symbolizing that this sign is very concerned with mastering the horizontal line of life, meaning our physical life circumstances, and finding out what really matters to us in the material world. And since its element is water, it goes about this in a very feminine, emotional, and sentimental way. And so, what are the most precious things in our material existence? Well, it is very much related with love, romance, the home, family life, reproduction, maternity, caringness, etc. Cancer rules the breasts, sensitivity, nurturing, with the heart also behind the breasts. It also rules the womb as well. So, like Virgo, it is very related to the Divine Mother. Cancer is also related to the thymus gland, and interestingly, if you look into it, it's the thymus gland that regulates the growth of children, and it's also intimately related to the mammary glands, which secrete the maternal milk for breastfeeding. And interestingly, it's the thymus gland which helps us to control sexual energy and is also related to remembering our past lives, since it's the Divine Mother, the Kundalini, who raises our vital forces through our heart, and it's her who brings us from life to life. So there will be mantras given at the end of this video which help awaken these inner abilities. So all of this usually makes people born under this sign very caring and sensitive people who are very good at looking after others because they have a bigger disposition for sensitivity and empathy and knowing how others feel. They usually make one of the best parents of the zodiac. And with all of this deep, sensitive, nurturing water element, like Pisces, they're usually people with powerful imaginations and can make great artists. It's important for all of us to work in this way with these Cancerian energies, with developing imagination too, this art side of clairvoyance, working with imagination consciously, since it's imagination that prepares us to get in touch with the inner worlds. The reason why we do not see the inner worlds is because our imagination is conditioned. Remember that imagination is clairvoyance, but currently our clairvoyance, our imagination, is hijacked by our legion of egos and is therefore asleep. It is latent. It is unconscious. So, Cancer is also ruled by the moon, which has a lot to do with imagination, emotions, the astral plane, etc. So this is why in esoteric studies we see the moon as the first planetary body to work with. We first have to work with the moon, meaning we have to become conscious of our unconscious lunar mechanical forces first, before we can work with the solar forces of the sun. So the moon is known to be the emotional part of our body. And the natives of Cancer, being ruled by the moon, are of course more influenced by the phases of the moon. On the first quarter or waxing moon and on the full moon is the best time for them to start new projects, go on trips, do business, etc. And they should be especially mindful during the waning period or new moon that their particular weaknesses as an individual don't manifest too strongly. Of course, this applies to all of us as well. So, with emotion being such a primary driving force in Cancer, there is, of course, the challenge of emotional instability and finding balance while feeling so much so intensely. The Cancerian challenge is to learn how and when to put reason above emotion, so that they aren't always controlled by the powerful crashing waves of impulsive feelings, and also learn how to discern what are positive superior emotions from the being that are safe to follow, and what are negative unconscious emotions that are possessing them and will make them and others suffer. This applies to all of us, of course. but we're talking more in the context of Cancer, and that they may experience this more intensely, emotionally. So with this challenge, combined with a powerful imagination, they have to be extra careful because they have this predisposition, this more psychic predisposition with their powerful imagination. They have to be extra careful not to convince or fool themselves that some situations in life are negative when it's just not the case, but that they are internally just being dominated by subjective emotions. It's this very sensitive Cancer part of us all that causes us to misinterpret things subjectively and makes us too stubborn to not admit when we're wrong, and that our emotions were just products of egoic imaginations in the mind. In order to admit such things, we have to recognize that we do not think our own thoughts, that our thoughts only ever come from ego most of the time, especially if we are not in touch with our being, with our inner God. So, having such a lunar and watery nature, this sign is easily the most emotional zodiac, and they usually display and express their emotions outwardly in their personality, making it very easy for others to read and feel their emotions. When they're happy, they're very happy. When they're angry, they're very angry. So, of course, being so predominantly emotional has its positives and negatives. On one hand, it's very beautiful to be so emotionally expressive, and it has its benefits socially, in intimate relationships, in works of art. Nobody likes an aloof and mysterious person who leaves people guessing what they're really thinking or feeling all of the time. But with a Cancerian, you usually know where they stand in most situations. However, their auras can be so emotional all of the time that it can be difficult to be around such strong emotions a lot, and other people may get exhausted by it. So what natives of Cancer have to be careful about, and what they have to learn, is of course controlling their emotions, but not so much controlling them in the beginning, but first learning to observe their emotional nature so that they can understand themselves emotionally, what their needs are, what triggers them, what they want from life and their life's purpose, and how to find balance, satisfaction, and true happiness from within, which can be done through getting in touch with their superior intellectual center and their superior emotional center. Meaning, by not identifying with negative emotions, taking responsibility for their emotional state, recognizing too that nothing external ever triggers emotional toxicity. Nothing external ever triggers negative emotions, but that it is always us, we ourselves, who consciously or unconsciously choose whether to conjure up negative emotions or not. If we want to be conscious people, we can never blame others for our emotional state. But at the very least, a person who is overly emotional but can admit and take responsibility for their emotions without blaming others or external circumstances is humble, sincere, and has humility. But an overly emotional person who thinks their negative states are justified through blaming others and their circumstances is an intolerable person and is acting from ignorance and selfishness and will hurt others ultimately. And on the topic of negative emotion, in the most negative expression of this Cancerian energy, it is when extremely strong negative emotions, extremely strong egos have almost permanently possessed a person. And as we all know, it is negative emotions which cause the most damage to the body. Organs, nervous system, hormones, etc. And in Gnostic studies, it's understood that the disease of Cancer spiritually comes from the rays of the Cancer constellation and the moon, especially when the negative attributes of this sign is applied to the sexual center, emotionally abusing it. Or in other words, when excess fornication and lust or black tantra occurs, then the disease of Cancer is the eventual outcome. To go into this a little bit esoterically, we understand that all souls are born or pass through the Cancer zodiac, because Cancer is the sign of Yesod, or the vital or etheric body, which is fundamentally sexual. It is where the physical body gets all of its energy from, all of its prana from. And this etheric vital body is governed by the moon and the Cancer constellation. And when we abuse our vital energies, the vital body can no longer sustain the physical body. It does not have enough prana to sustain health in the physicality. And the eventual effect of this is the disease of Cancer. So this is something modern science is yet to discover. And just before we go into the practices for this sign, Cancer is also similar to Taurus in the sense that they benefit greatly from having a well-established home where they can feel rooted, feel warmth with family, and have a good foundation and refuge to turn to after facing the obstacles of life. Usually, if they don't have this, they can feel out of balance. Cancer and Taurus are the best signs who understand that the home is more important than career and the outward ambitions of life. Because home is the foundation, and without a good home full of love, warmth, serenity, and beauty, how else are we to be successful in the more exterior parts of life? This kind of value is something that's really missing in Western culture today. Everyone today is obsessed with making money, a career, a persona, a reputation. Our degenerating society values career and business over a home and family life. The mind will say, oh, how can I have a family life without career and money? But this is a backwards way of thinking. This is not the way. If we want peace on this planet, we need more people who value a simple and humble life with their family, not needing much, just happy with the little things in life, rather than endlessly and greedily chasing the next exciting pleasure or endeavor here and there. Career and business, however successful it may be, is secondary. Cancer and Taurus can teach us that. Because if you really want to be successful in life, begin in your foundation. Focus on how much love you can develop in your heart and how much kindness and happiness and self-knowledge that you can acquire. That's the only way to begin living a true life. That's the only way to begin to know what we should really be doing in the more exterior parts of life. And relatedly, the opposite sign to Cancer is Capricorn. And as we saw in that video, Capricorn is more focused on the outward life of business, career, and practical life. And they're very good at it too. So Cancer can learn from Capricorn about how to be more rational and practical and less sentimental all of the time. And Capricorns can learn from Cancer about how to get more in touch with their emotions and how to find solace and balance in finding their inner and outer home or foundation. So, as for the zodiacal practice of this sign, as we've seen, Cancer is related to the moon and the challenge of discovering our lunar mechanical ego nature. And in order to do this, one of the best ways is through retrospective meditation. There's a video in the description, I'll put it on the screen, with a guided meditation teaching this technique. But you can also do the following practice, which is specifically for during this period of Cancer. I'll just read the Gnostic practice for you as it's taught. During the period of Cancer, before falling asleep in their bed, our Gnostic disciples should practice a retrospective exercise of their own life. Like someone who is watching a movie from the end to the beginning, or like someone who reads a book from the end to the beginning, from the last page to the first page. The objective of this retrospective exercise of our life is to self-know, to self-discover ourselves, to recognize our good and evil actions, to study our own lunar ego, to become conscious of our own subconscious, the subconsciousness being esoterically related to the moon. It is necessary to retrospectively arrive at our birth and remember it. That means to actually remember your birth. A superior effort will permit the student to connect his birth with the death of his previous physical body. Drowsiness combined with meditation and the retrospective exercise will permit us to remember our present life and the previous one and our other past existences. The retrospective exercise permits us to become conscious of our own lunar ego, of our own errors. Let us remember that the ego is a bunch of memories, desires, passions, anger, covetousness, lust, pride, laziness, gluttony, self-esteem, resentments, vengeances, etc. If we want to dissolve the ego, we must first study it. The ego is the root of ignorance and pain. Only the being, Atman, is perfect. But he is not born, nor does he die or reincarnate. This is how Krishna said it in the Bhagavad Gita. So the being is of the vertical line of life. It is eternal, not of the horizontal line of life, of time. Okay? So to continue, if the student falls asleep during the retrospective exercise, so much the better, because in the internal worlds he will be able to know himself. Remember his entire life and all of his past lives. In other words, this will happen in the inner worlds, or however you want to call it, in the dream world or in the astral world. Okay? In the same manner that the medical surgeon needs to study a cancerous tumor before eliminating it, likewise the Gnostic needs to study his own ego before eliminating it. So, through this, you begin to understand for yourself, if you make progress with it, how the thorough comprehension of your ego is intimately tied to the recollection of your past lives. Those who want to recall their past lives must want to know themselves too. They must have a great degree of observation and detachment from their own psyche, from their own mind. And you will see, as you work on your ego from day to day, you will be shown parts of your past life, especially parts of the past life to which certain egos that and certain parts of your psyche that you've been studying are related to those previous lives. Additionally, there are also a couple of mantras you can practice more of during this time. The first one is the mantra A or A, like Ah, as taught in the chakra series, which a lot of you will know. And that mantra helps with the thymus gland, as talked about earlier. But there's also a very powerful mantra, which I recommend for this, which is abracadabra, and has to be chanted in a very specific way. I highly recommend following this video by Glorian. I'll put it on the screen, and I'll leave the link in the description. It's a really powerful mantra. And lastly, in the mornings, you should also practice the retrospective mantra Raom Gaom, as taught in one of my previous videos as well. Practice it as soon as you wake up. Make sure that when you wake up, it's the very first thing you do. It's a powerful mantra for recalling the experiences you had during sleep. Remember, it doesn't matter if you say to anyone that you don't dream at night. You do. Remember that all of us have experiences every night when the physical body goes to sleep. We just don't remember them. So when you wake up, do not move. Do not open your eyes and do not think any worldly thoughts. Just simply mentally chant the mantra. Ram Gam. And just keep chanting it in your head, waiting patiently and trusting that your astral memories will come back to you. Practice it every day. Good luck.